correspondent at NBC News, but I'm so excited about our panel today and this conversation. It's going to be such an interesting one. I am joined here on stage, you're probably aware if you're in this room, by Arthur C. Brooks, William Henry Bloomberg Professor, Practice of Public Leadership, Harvard Kennedy School, and the author of many books, including the latest, The Meaning of Your Life. And I'm also joined by Whitney Wolfe, founder and CEO at Bumble Inc. Thank you both for being here.
Thank
you.
Good
morning.
Thank you.
This is just so interesting because what we're really going to talk about today, as the title of this panel suggests, is the science of love, which you have just partnered on. A lot of new science that we just got was actually just published yesterday in this fantastic white paper. But what's so interesting about it, really, to go back to the beginning, Whitney, is to really invest in people finding love, connecting with each other, and importantly, as we're going to discuss, connecting in person, means ultimately they're getting off your app, which is a little counterintuitive given what your business is. Take us back to what you identified as an issue that made you want to seek a partnership like this one.
Well, he's brilliant, obviously, and for those of you that don't know him personally, also extremely funny, apparently. So
We'll see about that.
Tears from laughter were flowing moments
we've
ago.
been crying all morning. So listen, I think we're at this moment that everyone thinks that they've been on, things like social media, which are much more antisocial than we realize. And we're at the intersection of, every morning waking up to these videos of people introducing their AI boyfriends and girlfriends to their parents. And this is a big problem. I mean, we cannot allow society to go down that rabbit hole. And I think when you look at all of the research and all of the work that you have done, happiness really does come down to who we share our life with. And so we really embarked on this partnership in an effort to help better enable people getting offline into the real world. And, there's definitely this mindset from more of the investor community, I would say, that says, well, if they're successful, they lose their members, and how is this a good business? But what's so powerful, and we were just talking about this, is this KPI of real love, which I'll kick it to you in 2 seconds. That's the most powerful flywheel for growth, because when you go to a Bumble wedding or you meet this happy couple and they have found, this amazing life through the person they met on Bumble, what is a more powerful flywheel or proof of success or reason to join than that? So that's kind of the background. We want to help people find real love. So take it away, Arthur.
How bad were you seeing the problem of dating app burnout?
No, it's a real problem. And actually, just yesterday, we teased, because we haven't released the new product yet, but we teased that we are actually ending the swipe for our product. So this is a RIP to swiping for us. It's been a good run, but our time is done. And we are going to release a new product, which, Arthur, we can't talk about it too much, but gave us the stamp of approval, which means more than most people realize. And really the goal of this new product is to get people from that first interaction to meeting in real life more seamlessly and in a more compatible, healthy, safe way. And we think it's going to be transformational. We're excited.
Okay, so let's talk about the partnership. First, who called who? How'd this come to be?
Oh, I made the first move, obviously.
Because on Bumble, you make the one with the first move.
And what did she say when she said she wanted to work together?
Well, when our teams actually started talking to each other, there was a natural affinity for it, for exactly the reasons that Whitney was just talking about, the issue. So in life, there's two big kinds of problems that we face. And it sounds like we're splitting hairs here, but we're not. There's complicated problems, which are based on facts and information and analysis and algorithms, and there's complex problems, which you'll never solve, you can only live with, and those are the things you care about the most. So how to get to work with your GPS is a complicated problem. How to build a toaster is a complicated problem. How to stay married is a complex problem. Trust me, I've been married for 35 years. Very, very complex. And so the truth is, what we care about is the complex stuff that you can't solve ever. You can't solve it with an algorithm, and that's what tech has been getting wrong when we talk about the things that we care about the most. So if you go back to social media in 2008, 2009, the promise was this is going to solve loneliness. But that's wrong, because loneliness is a complex human problem, and social media is a complicated set of algorithms. When you try to solve a complex problem with complicated solutions, you make it worse. And that's the biggest problem with dating apps, is what it comes down to. When your metric is time in app, that's a complicated solution to a business problem. When it's falling in love and staying in love, that's the deep value of the complexity behind humanity. And that's how it's different. And when that became clear, then that's when we knew that this was the match that we needed to have. Now, how do you monetize it? How do you instantiate it? How do you build it into a product? That's the most exciting thing, and that's what we're working on today. That's what her team is working on.
So you set out, though, to do, and you've revealed real new research
Yeah.
when it comes to falling in love.
Yeah.
Just tell me first about even setting out to do that, given what we all know, the books we've read of yours,
Yeah.
to focus on what's happening in your brain when you're falling in love.
Yeah. So this is, my students are intensely interested in the science of falling in love for pretty obvious reasons. You know, you'd think everybody would, but the truth is I wasn't thinking about that in my 20s, which was a long time ago. In the 1980s, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't thinking about the science of falling in love because it just was what we did. That's all we cared about. It was just ordinary life is what it comes down to. It's not ordinary life anymore, which means we need to make it more explicit and help people understand how to do it. And so when I talk about the neurochemical cascade of what's happening when you're falling in love, my students find it extremely useful. And I explain it in relatively non-technical ways because my students are not neuroscientists, they're business majors. I talk about it in kind of, you would think about your brain as a business problem, as a matter of fact. Falling in love starts with attraction, obviously, and you know, modern sort of politically correct society has said that something's stupid about attraction, that there's something wrong with attraction, something predatory about attraction. Wrong. That's one of the great things in life is attraction toward each other, and it involves estradiol and testosterone and all sorts of wonderful, mysterious things in the psyche. That quickly turns in, and when you're starting to be really attracted to somebody and you're falling in love, into this sense of euphoria and anticipation. This is when neuromodulators get involved, mostly norepinephrine and dopamine, where, you know, a text, who cares? It's like, I think it's from her. It has special value. It has special importance, right? A dumb
It's so
text.
cool to read about that because I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
And when you see their name pop up and you're like,
Yeah. Well, I've never been there because there were no texts when I was falling in love, 35 years ago. But and then that's when the dark part actually comes in, because after a few weeks in this process, that's when serotonin levels tank, and low serotonin levels are usually implicated in clinical depression, which is why you take selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Prozac if you're depressed to increase serotonin in the synapse. But when it's low, that's when you ruminate in sadness, or you ruminate on another person, which is the process of bonding. Part of falling in love is being depressed. It looks like clinical depression because of this activity in the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex that comes from low serotonin levels, which is, by the way, why when people are taking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, more serotonin in the synapse, people will report that it's harder to fall in love. It's harder to bond to another person. Not impossible. Still work. Take your meds, folks. but it's harder, right? And then last but not least, what you want to get to is the oxytocin zone. That's when you bond to each other as kin. The magic of marriage is that you adopt a stranger and make her your kin. It's the apex of both family and friendship. Is romantic love, and that's when you bond to each other with this vasopressin and oxytocin and these neuropeptides. And so that's the process.
and what's so important though about that last point, and I know that you were super interested in this, Whitney, is that last piece that is what leads to that lifelong love happens in person.
It has to be in person. It has to. Which means Bumble is still an incredibly interesting and major opportunity, because if we stop meeting in person, Arthur, tell us what's going to happen. I mean, it's not going to be good.
It's not good. It's what you get is the first couple of steps, and it gets truncated. And this is one of the reasons that apps that are where you're too long virtually, the relationships burn out, or you wind up with the wrong person. You actually don't understand the nature of attraction, or there's predation. There's predators at that particular point that are trying to make you feel deep attraction because what they want is lots of anonymous sexual activity, which doesn't lead to love.
Is that the dark from?
Well, I mean, this is one of the reasons that hookup apps, they're bait for.
Which is not Bumble, for the record.
Exactly right. Exactly the opposite. For sociopathic males, they thrive on hookup apps. for that particular reason, because they truncate that whole process that I just talked about.
I think even though, like, for women who have experienced that on these apps, reading the science behind, like, that is essentially like a personality type that's out there that exists is helpful.
Yeah.
Like, it's not you, it's them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you mean the dark triad?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you
Oh,
think?
yeah. I don't want to talk about dark triads.
Is this a problem when
I've
you're?
known too many of them.
Yeah, right.
No, but it's a real issue. We
Yeah.
were actually just talking about this, like, the power of AI actually. In fact, with the way we can now get to know our members better, Arthur and I were saying there's so much you can learn about someone. There's these questions you can ask, and you can start to derive different bits and pieces of someone's personality so that we actually prevent you from being exposed to someone that we know is not good for you. And so that's really
Wow.
where this precise matching opportunity becomes so interesting, to really waste less of your time. And frankly, that's going to be the new product that launches in Q4, is about shortening that horizon of getting on the app to getting off the app. But what we don't want to do is just send you out on a date with, 20 different dark triads. That's not the goal here. We really want to make sure that compatibility is layered into this connecting process so that you can actually find more suitable folks that we know will work for you. But then this really interesting thing happens, which is, how do you simulate chemistry online? And I asked you, can I share what I asked you
Yeah,
about?
of course.
So, and share with the group. I said, how did you know you were in love with your now wife?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
what was it?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what was that thing? Because that thing cannot be simulated.
Yeah.
It has to happen in real life. Can't be simulated on the app.
Yeah, yeah.
Share.
So it's interesting. Whitney and I talked about this because, for a little bit of background, I'm married to a woman from Barcelona, and we met in a neutral country, France. Actually, it's not neutral. It's anti-American. But my point being that when we met, she didn't speak a single word of English, and I didn't speak a single word of Catalan or Spanish. So I did at the age of 24, I did the only thing that one should do when somebody has no words in common. I asked her out. and we were, she's so attractive to me. And Whitney's like, how did you know? How'd you know? And because relatively shortly thereafter, I actually quit my job in New York City and moved to Barcelona. I took a job. I was a musician in those days, to work as a musician there. But the real reason is I was chasing this woman. I was going to learn the language, and I was going to close the deal. How did you know? How'd you know? And I said, I don't know. She smelled like cantaloupe on an August afternoon. I mean, what can I tell you? And okay, there's science behind the melon, all right, behind the cantaloupe. It's not the cantaloupe per se. The olfactory cortex in the brain senses your mate. That's why in-person matters.
Yes.
And when you're looking at a picture, it's just using the occipital lobe, the visual cortex of your brain. It's woefully insufficient. We smell the immunological profile of potential mates. There's a great study from the mid-1990s. You've all heard of it. It's the dirty T-shirt study, where men on a college campus, because they are in all the experiments, undergraduates will do anything for $20. Trust me.
It's so true.
And yes, and it's great. And
It's
the
literally
men
how I
wore-
launched this company.
men wore
Want $20?
Men wore
Going.
T-shirts for 48 hours. Didn't take them off. Doing sports, going to class, sleeping in them. And then they put the T-shirts in shoe boxes. And women who didn't know who they were sniffed the T-shirts and said,
This is
how
bizarre.
hot are these guys? And it turns out that the more immunologically different they were from each other, the hotter the women perceived the men to be. Why? Because you understand that your potential offspring have a better immunological profile from somebody who has different, what's called the major histocompatibility complex, and you get that from your olfactory cortex. It's not just about the August afternoon. It's that it's like, I don't know what it is, but we're going to have healthy kids. And you can't get that on the app.
That would be a great Bumble bio.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know. But there's got to be, and look, technology, no joke. I mean, Bumble is actually is working with ideas about voice, because that's really, really important. Who knows within 2 or 3 years whether or not we can smell each other.
Well, that's the next feature coming soon.
Sniff. You just touched on one of the other things about your research that I think is super interesting for people who are on a dating app, and I would love to hear also how you can help the people who are using your app, like with things like their bios and pictures, which is that a lot of people are seeking sameness
Right.
but that actually is not the recipe for love.
Well, I think we've been in this era of over-filtering. Like, what do I not want? I'm certain I don't want that. I'm certain they must be this height. They must be this. They must be that. Like, we're doing like designer boyfriends, basically, where you're like, oh, I'm just going to design this perfect person that if it's not exactly this, don't show them to me. But what's interesting, we've run experiments over the years where when we loosen those filters and we actually show you people outside of your filter range, your compatibility goes up. Your actual connection rates go up. Your match rates go up. So it's not this, there is this notion where humans, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but we think we want this certain thing. But what we actually want, I mean, do you think you woke up and you're like, I want to spend the rest of my life with someone I don't speak the same language with? That wasn't what you were seeking.
It was not.
So that's why we have to kind of reframe this notion of filtering on a dating app where we're like, we don't want this, we don't want this, we do want this. And we can have preferences. But what I think is super interesting is there's really only 4 things, thanks to this research, that come out as what I would say are non-negotiables. And those are really the only 4 things that, frankly, should be filtered, which, will you share those 4 things, please? Because I think it's really interesting. The kids, religion, like
Yes,
there are
the
a few
questions that actually ask.
non-negotiables that actually matter.
Just values congruence is what
Yep.
it comes down to. Is the basis of values congruence is critically important. What are you truly looking for in a relationship? You basically know that. I mean, if you don't know that, then you're probably you need to do a lot more work before you get on Bumble. It's like, what do you want? But that is kids, it's religion, it is, marriage, you get the picture, right? What we don't know is actually what we want beyond that, because we don't know ourselves very well. There's a ton of really interesting psychological experiments that show that people don't know themselves. You don't know what you're good at. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what you're going to say. If you're married, your spouse knows what you're going to say better than you know what you're going to say. And that's because the person is observing you and you're observing yourself with a huge number of biases is the way that works. And so the result of it is you need to establish a basic level of values congruence and then find people who are really different than you. Nobody says, you know what I really want? I just want myself. But that's not hot. It's not. People say, I want somebody who completes me. Somebody who completes you is axiomatically not you, is different than you. Puzzle pieces that go together. That's what they complete each other in this particular way. And you have a really hard time doing that. You wouldn't have been able to have curated your potential mate in the day because it depends on the people that you run across in church
That's right.
or at down at the club, or that the matchmaker back in the shtetl is actually setting you up with. That's kind of the way that it worked. But now it's like, I want this. I want somebody who likes Austin, Texas, and I want somebody who eats sriracha, and I want somebody who votes for Democrats. And it's like, it's just so boring to date yourself.
Right. Huh. That's true.
But
I
this
like
is
that.
where also I think the magic of groups comes in and just getting people in the real world.
Yeah.
So we've seen this. We have this friend finding product called BFF. And, the explosion of desire to be part of these groups and just go in the real world and join a run club or show up at this, you can't even imagine the different groups that are taking place. Like there's crocheting with cocktails. I mean, the stuff is very creative, but they're just getting together in the real world and they're finding their new friends, but they didn't necessarily find their friend on like a one-to-one matching capacity. They just got there and then they found each other from there. And so I think there's this catalyst and this opportunity for Bumble to be where things begin. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way you found your partner through a match. Like you can just get on Bumble, and if there's something cool in your area tonight, just go and see who's there. And so we're very, very interested in just bringing people together in small groups versus just this one-to-one-to-one. A friend of mine is dating someone, and she calls him her Bumble adjacent boyfriend. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? She went on a Bumble date. The Bumble date brought a friend. The friend is her boyfriend. So she's like, he's my Bumble adjacent boyfriend. And so it wasn't the guy she matched with, but it was the guy he invited. And so there's this magic in numbers when we just get people together, which is why I think college, church, all of these old versions of coming
Right.
together worked so well.
Yeah.
And if you look at the statistics, meeting through a dating app is now the number one way people meet. And that has been the reality for the last several years. But prior to that, the number one way people met was through a friend, church, or some community gathering, work. And that has now completely tanked and plummeted because we've gone so online and we're so antisocial now.
Right.
A bunch of young Gen Z women, I spend my time with a lot of young college women because I've now like aged out of that cool crowd. And they teach me all the things. And they're like, yeah, no one makes moves. We like go out to a bar and like no one talks to each other anymore, which is really scary and sad. And so that is exactly what we're trying to reverse engineer now and just get people making moves so that we can just get you out with people and let it go from there so you can have the cantaloupe experience, right? And that's what it's all about.
Wasn't
Yeah.
the stat in the white paper 45% of 18 to 25-year-old men have never asked a woman out?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. And it's going up every single year. And a couple of things happen. One is the general disintermediation of relationships by tech. The second is COVID, of course. And so people Gen Zers who came through, who graduated from high school and went through college during the COVID experience, this is their formative years when they had no exposure to their potential mates. And the result is that they're weirdly formed. They don't know how to do it. I talk to men in their late 20s all the time who've literally never been on a date. It's like that's all I did in my 20s. That's all I wanted when I was in my 20s. That was my gig. That was my job. Is what it came down to. And so that lack of exposure is a really important thing. And Whitney's got this observation about sort of the future of this. This is quite subversive. Let's see if I get this right. Okay.
Let's see.
That dating apps, generally speaking, what they want to do is they want to substitute for the in-person components of mating. And the philosophy that Whitney and her team is bringing to Bumble is adding in more humanity into an algorithm, more human friction into the algorithm. In other words, more complexity into the complicated problem itself, which is, by the way, really inefficient, right? When you get to a particular juncture and you throw away lots of potential mates and your best buddy actually is the one who says, these are the 5, trust me. I don't know why, they just are. That's a very, very inefficient thing to do, but it's the old way. And it's the only way that this is ultimately, I think, going to succeed. 62% of relationships right now are starting on the apps, depending on what source you look at.
Wow.
And those that start on apps, generally speaking, are less satisfying than ones who don't. Which means that we're going in the direction where you're doing something more and more and more that brings you less and less and less happiness. There's got a way to solve it, and that's the purpose of this.
Exactly. The other thing I would say is super fascinating is, and you said this in the paper, and you've said this to our team on our sessions, is people spend so much time trying to be interesting that they forget to be interested. And that's kind of where this dynamic collapses. And you were saying that most men will go on a first date and not ask one question.
Wow.
They just speak about themselves. And so what we're taking all of these facts and figures and all of these dynamics, and we're trying to digitally, with real heart and soul behind it, but flip the switch. So you'll see in the future, profiles won't just be this way for you to just show off and peacock and be interesting, but maybe there's an interesting, inverse of this where they're now a mechanism to get interested in others, and then that's where connection thrives. So if my profile goes from just me like, hi, this is me, this is my dating resume, this is why you should love me, into like, hey, actually, I'm curious about you. And based on your response, based on who you are, now all of a sudden I'm interested in you back. So I think there's something there around this like show off era we're in.
Oh yeah, completely. This is the whole idea of this is the mirror that is social media. I mean, this is what people actually use it for, is as a mirror on themselves. And so other people can look at themselves. It's an intensely me-focused, sort of the psychodrama of me is one of the reasons that anxiety and depression are so high. The truth is that you will never be happy when you're looking at yourself. It's almost impossible for you to attain joy in your life by looking at yourself. And social media has turned everything inward in that particular way. And people have lost the ability to take interest in other people. They actually don't know how it's done, which is quite fascinating. That there will be dating coaches that will teach young men how to ask questions about women's lives. And which is weird when you think about it. It's like, okay, ask her this, ask her that. Like, okay, got it. And I realize that we're dense, but there's a problem in our society when that skill has been beaten out of us. It's true that the work that Whitney's referring to. I have a colleague at HBS named Allison Wood Brooks. She's actually not related to me. We're both A. Brooks. I get her email all the time. And Allison has a book about how to talk to other people, and she found that the median, which is to say, the average number of questions that a man asks a woman on a first date is 0.
Oh my gosh.
0 questions, right? It's
wow.
And that I suspect that 25 years ago that was not the case.
Oh, that is dark.
Yeah. Oh.
Yikes. I want to ask, I knew I was going to wish this was an hour. One more thing from the research that was really interesting to me, because you gave a really good tip for flipping this on its head. 2 attachment styles are on the rise, and they're not good. And you want us to reframe anxious and avoidant.
Yeah, and this is another area. This is not my main area of research, but Bumble is working on this as well. The 2 pathologies in attachment, a romantic attachment or parental attachment or even friendship, are anxious and avoidant. And so avoidant attachment is where you hold people at arm's length. You've got better things going on. You don't want to go deep with anybody. Usually that's based on fear. And then the overt fear is anxiety, where you're just freaking out when you're in particular relationships. And the truth is, everybody's somewhat avoidant and everybody's somewhat anxious if this is important to you. The whole point of a relationship is making it less so. And the point of my 35 years of marriage is I've gotten into the secure quadrant of non-anxious and non-avoidant. That's the goal. Is what you get a whole marriage to do that. But you got to get there sooner is the whole point. And when you're propelled and you're substituting for the in-person experience, you'll actually never get over those humps, which is another reason that Bumble's trying to get people out on dates fast.
Yeah, exactly. And just shortening that opportunity to go into a like rot inbox or match rot, where we're treating people, or we have been with the dating apps, as just something you can kind of hoard. It's like a shopping cart. We'll just leave it there for later, right? And we'll just come back to it. And so we're flipping that, and we're saying, really it's about, if you're going to express interest, how do you do it thoughtfully, meaningfully, and then take that interest and do something with it. Don't let it just be wasted, low intent. And so that's really the way we're using both your research, but AI in particular, to kind of design around these hurdles that we've kind of, been part of the problem. But this is what happens when you're on the forefront of mobile dating. It was kind of the first time people had used their cell phones to date. And so we've had to just kind of learn from the consequences. And now I'm excited to be back as CEO to take the current member pain points, which is my design philosophy anyway. When I was starting Bumble, it was just women were being inundated and spammed by bad behavior and harassment. I said, wait a second, we need to flip this. If this is how the interaction model is working, let's fix the interaction model and put women in control of the experience. And that was the beginning of Bumble. And so now I feel like I'm kind of refounding the company right now on this big base with millions of people and a global brand, which I'm so grateful for. But now it's about what's the next interaction model of today with today's problems. And today's problems are people are just not getting out there, and they're not meeting each other, and they're not falling in love the way that they should be. And so I'm just in the business of helping people find love. That's what I do. My kids think, my 6-year-old son says, Mom helps people get married. So apparently that's my job.
Adorable.
It's my bio.
That's a pretty good, And there's I'll say this is one of the things that we talk about at a business school, is that the greatest businesses have one thing in common. And they have a lot of things that they do, and there's a lot of variation, different kinds of CEOs. The one thing that all great companies do is they focus on value that people want. Not intermediate KPIs, time and app. No, the ultimate value that people want. And if your value proposition is that happiness comes from love, a good life comes from loving and being loved, and the most intense, complex variety of that is romantic love, that's the value that you're trying to create. That's a winner.
And that's where we end the session, folks. Yeah. That was exactly the message. It's all about love at the end of the day. That's happiness.
It is.
And
Love
you're
is
the
happiness.
expert.
Yeah.
So
It's just so neat, though, that this research is going to turn into things that are going to be tangible for a Bumble.
they will be very tangible. I mean, and the one thing I will say is this is not just for this room. I mean, Arthur is in meetings with our head of data science and our head of product and deep teams that are actually algorithmically programming this research into existence. So how cool that we can now put this into the hands of millions and millions of people around the world.
Yeah.
And hopefully will make love easier and more fruitful.
That's right. It's a really worthwhile thing to do. I'm really excited about the future.
Arthur and Whitney, thank you so much.
Thank
What a
you.
fascinating, fun
Thank you.
conversation. I so appreciate it. And please stick around. There is incredible programming that's going to happen right here, starting now.